My interest in one state, Massachusetts, is could it take off around the other 49 states? If a respected state with respected medical centers pulled off what they did in June, I believe it was.
They are way behind everybody else. Massachusetts is the most inefficient, high cost. Yeah. I hate to say it, it's full of big teaching hospitals. And they spend a hell of a lot more per capita than most of the people because they've got all these giant, wonderful teaching hospitals to provide the rest of them.
Will we see individual states start doing this, or has the passage of the ACA law made this less of an incentive? Will states still continue to act on their own independent of the federal law?
Yes.
Do you have any sense of the politics there?
At TennCare, I approved the TennCare waiver in 1990. And they struggled with it because they overpromised and they provided too much care without enough money, but it's the same concept. It's that Massachusetts is trying to do, which is basically have a global capitation, which Tennessee did years ago, and a number of other states.
How about California or some big state? Any word of anyone since June that anyone's looking at Massachusetts?
California's 25 years ahead of everybody. California's been doing this essentially through HMOs and county-based HMOs for 25 years. California spends way less than any of the big states with much better outcomes.
I think we have some of these unicorns out there, right? Yeah. And some that are actually remarkably effective, right? The question is, how do you take places like Geisinger Health? How do you take, Mayo Clinic? How do you take some of these Kaiser models that have been effective and that have used that sort of integrated care system, and how do you create it where it hasn't been before? And that I don't think we know. And similarly, well, I want to put a slight word of caution that I think we are moving towards, without a doubt, towards heavy involvement of Medicaid managed care in the new expansion population. It's very well suited to certain populations. It's not as well suited to populations that have never been in a lot of these commercial plans before. So when we're talking about dual eligibles, people on Medicare and Medicaid, talking about people with significant disabilities and requirements for long-term care issues, there we're starting to see states moving populations into managed care that haven't been there before, and I think it's certainly worth considering. But I'd be a little less gung-ho that it's going to work all.
Well, if you pay the plans the right amount, and look what's happened in Medicare.
And look for the
outcomes. Risk-adjusted Medicare. Medicare HMOs used to avoid sick people. We changed the rules a few years back and started paying them. If you find a really sick, multiple comorbidity 78-year-old, you're going to get paid $40,000 to the patient. Now United Healthcare loves them. They're chasing sick people. So it's all about the money you give them. If you give enough money to take care of it, they'll do it and do a better job.
But as with all things in healthcare take twice as long as what everyone thinks. So I think it'll take twice as long as what everyone thinks for us to have a rational Medicaid system. We may never get to rationality, actually, given the history of it. But these changes aren't going to happen overnight. I think we get to the point of facing a cliff and having our toes be over the edge, and then realizing that there's a real issue.
So the thing that drives changes, I'd say, is money. Yeah. And so I'm not a big fan of block grant necessarily, although I like Governor Romney. But this idea that Tom Dash was talking about of telling the states, here's the amount of money you got per capita, it's a reasonable amount, you go do it, is going to drive states to do a lot more California, a lot more Massachusetts, because as long as they're in the current system, they don't have any incentive.
That's a great comment. So if the federal government gives the money to the states in a different manner, it will motivate, incentivize changes, and we might see more Massachusetts around the state.
Absolutely. Look at John Kitzhaber as a physician, very liberal governor of Oregon. I happen to like him a lot, smart guy. Oregon is trying to drive, because he's got a lot of full consensus there, to drive to total Medicare managed care. Why? It's going to save money for Oregon, and he's an emergency room doc. It's going to provide better care, and we should let him do it.
Well, let's talk next more